It's a blowout. 8th inning, 10-3. Bases are loaded for Verlander, who waits on a 3-0 pitch. He swings, and it's a high fly ball. Deep center field. It is gone. Home run. And a huge bat flip to celebrate. All right, Ben, start the show already.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Flippin Bats, and we have an awesome conversation for you today. Stud pitcher for the Miami Marlins, Pablo López, is about to join me in just a minute. What a fun conversation we're going to have. We're going to talk all about his journey to the big leagues, which is truly a fascinating one. He was tasked with the incredibly difficult decision of picking between becoming a doctor, which is what a lot of his family wanted, or playing professional baseball. So we'll talk about that, and as well as the tragedy that he faced as a young kid of his mother passing away and how he used baseball to work his way through that. Truly an incredible story, and now he's having potentially an all-star year. So I'm pumped for you all to hear this conversation. Let's welcome him in now, Pablo López. Pablo, thank you so much for joining me, man.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me. Very excited for this opportunity to be here with you.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I'm pumped to have you on. So I want to go back a little bit because you've had an awesome story and an awesome journey to where you are right now as an awesome pitcher in the big league. So I want to start with your early on career, being a kid from Venezuela. How did you fall in love with the game of baseball from the beginning?
I think just like any kid playing catch with my dad, then obviously being 6, 7 years old, and my dad realizing that I liked it. So starting just playing Little League Baseball, and then just going up every 2 years to like a different category as I was just growing older. And then just little by little, just falling more and more in love with the game. I was able to play different sports growing up, but I think everyone could tell that baseball was the one I liked the most. And then I kept playing, and obviously as I was getting older, the competition was getting higher and higher, and I was still able to keep up with it. So I think by the time I reached age 15, it's when I was like, I do want to try to get into the tryouts to see if I can be eligible to sign the July 2nd after my 16th birthday. Mm-hmm. And I started working really hard for that opportunity, and luckily I was able to like find it.
That's so cool. Who do you grow up rooting for from Venezuela? Like, did you root for a particular team, or was it players? Who did you root for?
So obviously the Yankees were the team that everyone liked. So I like the Yankees, but I also like the Giants with Barry Bonds, just being Barry Bonds, winning like 5 MVPs and all those homers. So I grew up watching the Yankees and the Giants, and Jason Giambi was like my favorite player when I was little. Just the things he was doing with the Yankees, and then even when he was older and I was older, I still was just in awe with everything Giambi was doing. So he was my favorite player growing up.
So were you also keeping track at the time? Because probably when you were still pretty young, Miguel Cabrera from Venezuela was already in the big leagues. So were you a big fan of his and watching him, or was it the Barry Bonds of the world, the Giambis of the world, stuff like that?
No, Cabrera too. And funny story about him, he's the first autograph I ever got when I was like 8 or 9 years old. Because he was playing in the Venezuelan Winter League, and I was able to just like greet him and ask for an autograph ball. And by the time he had already made his debut here, so he was just getting more reps in Winter League, Winter Ball. So being able to get that autograph meant a lot. Sad part of the story is I don't know where the baseball is anymore.
No.
But at least I get the memory, like Miguel Cabrera, first autograph I ever got. And then I got a funny twist. I don't know where the baseball is.
That's hilarious. So today, your changeup is one of the best pitches in baseball. And if I remember correctly, you pretty much learned that pitch in Little League. Like, that's when you first started throwing it as much as you did, and have obviously adjusted it and continued it onto your big league career. But is that true? You started throwing that pitch in Little League?
So the way it started was when I turned maybe 10 or 11 years old, I moved up in the Little League world to a different category that would allow us to throw breaking balls. Mm-hmm. But my dad, being the doctor that he was like, no, you're too young for that. So he taught me like a slower fastball. So it was just the same fastball grip, just get it deep in your hand, like just like shove it way back there, and then you throw it slower. And then as I grew older, I'm like, okay, now it's not as slow as it used to be. And then we started just like doing research little by little. Then we found out actual changeup grips. And then I started playing with those in the tryouts. And after tryouts, you'll get scouts coming to you and give you like recommendations like, okay, but you can do this, try that. So that's how we started working and developing it. And then when I signed and got into the Seattle Mariners farm system, then I was actually getting a lot of like resources, more research, more information about it. So I kept the same grip that I had learned from like internet and stuff, but then I was able to pay more attention to details and what I was really looking for that pitch to look like and for the action that we wanted to do.
So you don't still consider it just a slower fastball anymore. It is a changeup for you now.
Now it is a changeup. It used to be a slower fastball, like dipping my hand, just going like that to make it slow. Now I throw it like a fastball, but the changeup doesn't work for me. So sorry, the grip doesn't work for it, and then it just throw it like a fastball, but then at the very last second, it drops and it fades, and I think that's the beauty of the pitch. It looks like a fastball until like 10 feet and just drops.
Were you mad at the time when you weren't allowed, when your dad wouldn't let you throw breaking balls? Because I remember being in Little League, I was fairly similar. I wasn't allowed to throw breaking balls when everybody else was. And I think, my parents knew, not that they were doctors, but they just knew my brother is 9 years older than me. So along the way, people had just said, do not let him throw breaking balls. So then I come along, but they let me throw this thing called a dart ball. Have you ever heard of it? It's basically like a curveball, but you just kind of like throw it like a dart. That's what I was throwing as a kid, was fastballs and dart balls.
Now, not that I was mad, but sorry, just real quick, but a lot of people were throwing breaking balls at 10 or 11, and they were just bangers. They looked like bangers for that age.
Yeah, at that age.
And I was like, I want to do that too, but my dad was just like, no, you can't, it's going to mess you up, all this and that. So eventually it's just like, I gave up. And then a time came to finally learn a breaking ball, and I'm still looking for a consistent one, but the work never stops.
When you were younger as a kid, you went through some pretty challenging things in your life. Did you use baseball as an escape for yourself during that time to kind of get away from the craziness and what the sadness that you were going through in your life? Did you use baseball as an escape for you at that time?
Yeah, baseball was definitely something that was already there, and going through what I was going through was an escape, and it just gave me an opportunity to look forward for something. And with the values that my family has and they've always had, it gave me the motivation and inspiration that if I really like this, I'm going to try to do it the right way. My family, they were always like, whatever you're trying to do, just try to be the best version of yourself. You don't have to go out there and be better than anyone. Just be better than you were yesterday. So I think I was just trying to get 1% better every day with everything, with everything that I was dealing with. And then obviously with sports, school. So just having that mentality, I just need to get 1% better today, 1% better today. And I think it gave me something to look forward to. And it always kept the bar going higher and higher. So I think that was it was a good approach that kept me in check with the things I wanted to do, where I wanted to go. And it kept me within my own limits and not trying to do too much or not worrying too much about what could have been, what could be different. So it just kept me in the present. And I think that was a big thing to learn at a young age.
Yeah. So, and speaking of schooling, you ended up graduating high school at 16 years old, and you were presented with a really, really interesting decision. Just from an outside looking in, there's not a lot of baseball players that had to make this decision, but you graduate and have to make the decision of becoming a doctor and going to med school or signing to play professional baseball. I guess first off, what was the decision-making process like for you?
Well, the decision-making process was, I had my mom's side of the family that they are all very academical. Like my mom was a doctor. I have aunts that are engineers, oil engineers, computer engineers, computer science, lawyers. So I have that side of the family. Then I have my dad, who was a doctor, very good doctor, but who also played baseball. So I think he had a better feeling of, like how this decision can really change some things in the future down the road. So eventually what it came down with was just me having a good chat with my dad. And my dad, first of all, letting me know that whatever the decision was going to be, I would have 100% of his support, regardless of the decision. But then he did say, like, if you choose to go for to be a doctor, I have no doubt in my mind you're going to be the best doctor you can be. But just realize that if you go that way and then you try to jump on the baseball train again, it's going to be very hard to do that. Whereas if you take the baseball opportunity now, that I have no doubt you're going to be the best version of yourself. And if for some reason it doesn't work out, you realize it's not what you want to do, it's going to be fairly easier to take that step back and jump right into college after that. And then he left me with that. And then at the end, he said, like, just as you grow older, the body gets weaker, but the mind gets stronger. Obviously, and then when you put that into perspective, when you go to college, your mind is the one doing most of the work. So I think that really stuck with me. And it just made the decision easier. But at the same time, made me realize that if I'm going to pursue this baseball career, I need to be very committed to it. Because if I end up not liking it, I know the other opportunity, I know what could have been. So I think that just kept me motivated, and it just kept me trying to ask myself, am I going to do today what's going to help me get where I want to be tomorrow? So I think that was just like, it kept me I need to make sure that I'm doing the things today that are going to help me reach where I want to get with the decision I'm making. So I think it was a very good chat, very good. It was a big debate because they happened around the same time, but I think I was able to not rush into anything.
That's awesome, man. That's a really cool story. And I also read somewhere that you promised your grandma that you would go to college and you would get your degree. What's an update there? Have you started that process yet? Where do we stand with that deal?
I have not yet. I still owe it to my grandma. That's my mom's mom, so that's the very academic side. So she was one of the persons I was not very excited when I made the baseball decision, just because she didn't really understand the baseball world. Now, obviously, now she's very proud of me, and making her proud is one of my biggest, like, it gives me so much happiness. But I haven't taken any first steps on that. But I think that promise stays and will always remain. Like, however long of a baseball career I'm allowed to have, whenever that time comes, I do want to go into the academic route and just get something. Obviously, it doesn't have to be doctor, because we all know how long that takes. But I do want to get some sort of like degree, something that just allows me to tell my grandma, tell my family, like, I was able to pursue one of my dreams, but also just do something about on the other aspect. So that remains true. That still remains one of my goals.
That's really cool, man. The arm, I think you made the right decision. The arm doesn't last after a couple of years. You can't just pick it back up, but your brain will stay there. And I think you'll be able to do that for sure, which is pretty cool. Hey, but I want to talk to you about the process of signing out of Venezuela real quick, because you end up deciding to sign with the Mariners. So what is that like as a kid in Venezuela? Are there like travel teams? Is there like tryouts for leagues, or is it just, okay, scouts know from your high school stats how good you are and they'll come see you? What is the process like of you being a good high school player to signing a professional contract?
Yeah, so we don't have like high school teams like you do have in the United States. So it's one of those things that you're playing little league, you're playing travel ball. But then when you start reaching that 15 years of age, then people will start coming to your games and they'll start paying attention to, like, if you're good, if in a year they think you might have what it takes to enter the professional baseball at 16. So when some scouts start paying attention to that, they might reach to you or to your parent, someone that, like, represents you in that aspect. And then they'll let you know, like, I think in a year or two, he might have an opportunity to, like, enter professional baseball. And then you'll start finding people that will let you know where tryouts can be. And once you have your first one or two tryouts, then you get invited for more if you perform good, So the more you perform good in front of scouts, the more tryouts you start getting. And then back then in Venezuela, we used to have academies. Like the Seattle Mariners, they had an academy in the country. And then I got invited to a couple of their tryouts with, like the farm directors, the field coordinators, Latin American pitching coordinators, scout directors. So like once you get into those kind of tryouts, then you really know that someone's paying attention and you might have an opportunity. So I remember my signing period was July 2nd, 2012, and I signed with the Seattle Mariners July 4th after I had a tryout in June of that year. So I had been trying out since April 2011. So right after my 15th birthday, I was just going tryouts by tryouts. And, you know, like you start little, and then if you keep performing, then you get to go to like the tryouts at the team's complexes.
So your first professional experience was actually there in Venezuela in the VZL, which I played in the Tigers organization, and a lot of guys would come up from the Venezuelan league and talk all about it. So what was that like as your first professional experience playing down there? Is it like, was it a situation where you're like, I want to see how I stack up with these people? Or what was that experience, that year you had down there? Because you did play really well. What was that like for you?
It was not what I was expecting, just because I had never pitched a full season before. My full season, I think, you know, like a full season of just pitching. So I think I ended up pitching that year 66 innings in the Venezuelan Summer League. And, you know, I was 17, and then you had players being 18, 19, which it's not really a lot when you're but when you're 17 and you're playing against someone that's 19 in his second or third Venezuelan Summer League year, then it does make a big difference. But I think I just tried to make sure that every day I was trying to do something to get better. Like I was always just paying attention to not only how my games went, but how my teammates' games went and what I could learn from them. I think I always took that approach because like I could always learn a lot from my starts, but I can always learn a little something different from someone else's start.
So you had, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
You ended up having a really good year that year. And like you said, though, it was the most innings you had ever thrown in your life. And I almost wonder, and obviously I don't think you necessarily know the answer to this, but I almost wonder if that's what led to your arm injury and ended up getting Tommy John and missing the whole next season. So I can't imagine, as a kid that's 17, 18 years old, just signing to play professional baseball and making the big decision that you did and disappointing some in your family at the time. I can't imagine playing 1 year and then having to miss a whole season from Tommy John. Were you scared at the time? Like, I might have made the wrong decision. I might never pitch again. I might get released. What was going through your head in that time?
No, like all those things that you just mentioned went right through my head. And 17, I had my surgery November 5th, 2013. So I was still 17 years old. And obviously that was almost 9 years ago. So obviously it was way different back then than it is now. So, but we still knew that there was a high chance of players coming back from that kind of injury and performing at the same level and sometimes even higher. So I think I always do a lot of research. So I did as much research as I could in 2013 and 14 to just keep myself at a good spot mentally. And then I knew that if I'm at a good spot mentally, I'm going to be able to get through the rehab process physically to make myself better, to make myself back to being healthy. And to this day, I still tell people that 2014, I think, was the biggest challenging year, but also the year that allowed me to grow the most in my career, because I had to face so many challenges, physically recovering from that injury, but also mentally getting the game taken away from you for that long after only experiencing my first professional season. That was not fun at all. So I think it really gave me perspective of how important the mental side of the game can be. If you're mentally tough, you will be able to learn from the good experiences and take good from the bad ones. And then I think that approach I've been able to keep it as my career has been able to continue. And then I still look back at 2014 and I'm like, that was such a tough challenge, but I'm really proud of myself for getting through it. And I think getting the game taken away from me made me just stronger, because I wasn't going to let that happen again. And I knew that by the time I came back in 2015, that approach, that mentality was going to allow me to cherish every single throw that I was able to make, and then just appreciate the opportunity and just try to make it worth it. I lost a full year of not playing. I need to make the following ones worth it. And just having that approach, that mentality, I think made a huge difference. So it was a very challenging experience, but I think I was able to get a lot of good out of it.
That's awesome. And I'm glad you share that. Thank you for sharing that because I talk a lot about the mental side of baseball and how the mental aspect of the game is just as, if not more important than the physical aspect because it is so grueling playing so many games every single day. And then another thing happened to you in your career that can get to you mentally. In July of 2017, you were traded from the Mariners to the Marlins, still as a young kid at the time, and then you're involved in a trade. You get placed in Jupiter, which, by the way, you got to Jupiter in July of 2017. I actually finished up my career with the Tigers in July of 2017 in the same league, the Florida State League, 2 days before we were making a trip to Jupiter. So I would like to apologize because if I hadn't gotten released at the time, you might have gotten to the big leagues quicker because you would have gotten to face me like probably 4 times and punch me out 4 times. So, the timing didn't work out for you.
Early miss each other.
The right changeups always got the best of me. So you probably would have done pretty well. So not too long after, you kind of shoot through the Marlins system and end up getting the call to the big leagues. Not too long after that, about a year or so after that. And I love asking guys this question. So what was that moment like for you? After everything you shared with us, the decision you had to make, going through Tommy John, that whole process, getting traded, the moment you get the call to the big leagues, take me through that moment.
Now, like going back to the trade, obviously, it's hard not to get attached at 16 to the one team that gave you the opportunity to get into baseball. So after 5 long years of developing, getting attached to the team, realizing that my journey took a detour to a new team was a little sad in a way, but also makes you excited. It gives you a lot of intrigue because like you realize that there are other teams out there that realize of the talent you have or what you can bring to an organization. So I think that was a very good way to look at it. So I was just like, maybe this will open plenty of doors for down the road. Mm-hmm. And then I think that just gave me that extra gear that by the time I got to Jupiter for the last 2 months of that season, just learning a whole new system, trying to get an understanding of, okay, what these guys see in me that I'm able to help them down the road. And then I think that just helped me move on to understanding like, okay, I have an opportunity here that I can really grab onto and make it work. And then I'm able to, that November, they put him in the 40-man roster, which was very exciting day. Awesome. I remember getting the phone call that I was going to be in the 40-man, so that made me really happy because it was going to be my first big league spring training camp in 2018. And then being surrounded by big leaguers and that spring training was the one of those experiences that you will never forget. Your first big league camp, you never forget it. Mm-hmm. And then I go back, I go down to AA, AAA, and I'm going through like a good period. I'm going through like a good moment. And then just realizing that when I get the call that I'm going to the major leagues, it was funny because my AAA manager realized that I was very good at doing my reports before the games. Mm-hmm. Like the night before, 2 nights before, I'm always just doing reports on the teams I'm going to face. And then he just comes to me while I'm doing my reports and like, what do you got on the New York Mets? And I'm like, well, I do know the kind of players they have, this and that. He's like, well, do you think if I give you the reports, you could make reports on them? I'm like, well, yeah, easily. Just give me the heat maps, their stats, whatever, and I'll make a good report. He's like, okay, I'm going to give it to you because you're gonna be facing the Mets on Saturday in Miami.
No
and then I was
way.
just like, wait, what? And then like I realized what was going on. And it was really cool.
I love that, man. That's so cool. So that conversation happened. Who's your first phone call?
I think first phone call was my dad. Once I'm done at the manager's office, with the news, the logistics, getting their congratulations, I ran to my locker, picked up my phone call and called my dad. And I think that was a very emotional phone call because my dad was a person that was always there for me since the beginning with the baseball, the decision making, my way through the minor league. So I think having the first phone call right there was very important for both of us. And then I needed to like just tell him beforehand, and then I was able to just like soak it all in after that, make other phone calls, pack my stuff, and then take it to Miami.
That's awesome. At what point was your grandma called? It had to be a fairly early one.
Oh yeah, it was fairly early. It was tough for me.
That's awesome. So in 2018, you got called up late in the year, so you didn't have a ton of starts. 2019, you had over 20 starts in the big leagues, and it was a tougher year for you, probably the hardest year statistically wise in your career, in your life to that point. What did you learn about yourself that year in 2019, both on the field and mentally as well?
Yeah, so obviously in baseball, people say that baseball is a game of failure, and that remains true because like the stats show it on the offensive side. But I think there's always a time that at some point the competition catches up to you, and then you have to realize that there are some adjustments that you have to make, and then I think just knowing that you don't have to change who you are. You just have to change a little amount of the things you do, whether it's your preparation, whether it's the way you get ready, it's just the routine in between your starts. And I think that I was good at making sure that I wasn't just changing everything, that I wasn't going to change the pitcher I was. I just need to make little adjustments. So I took one adjustment at a time in my bullpens, like, okay, on this specific bullpen, I'm going to work on this specific thing that's going to help the next one get better. So I at times I did try to fix way too many things at a single time, and it ended up backfiring on me. So that's when like pitching coaches, more experienced pitchers will tell you, like, you do not have to change everything. Just pick something that you really think you need to work on, and then once you fix that one, you move on to the next one. So 2019 was a very rough year. I had shaky moments, shaky starts, but I always had good people keeping me on check and just telling me, like, if you're here for a reason. Like, you have the talent, you have the tools to perform, to get people out. Now it's just a matter of realizing what's missing. And it doesn't have to be pitching. It can be just your routine. It could be the way you're getting ready. And it's just one of those things that sometimes once you take a step back and you look at the picture from a farther distance, you're able to pick out areas that you think you were missing at, that you were not doing things 100% the right way, and then you realize those things and you were able to make a change for the better.
Well, you did make that change for the better. In 2020, it was awesome. You had a great year, but that year was a little different, obviously, for the entire world. And baseball started very briefly and then got shut down and then restarted for the summer camp thing. And then you had an awesome 2020. But how did you use that shutdown time in 2020? Because that transition from your 2019 season to your 2020 season was truly incredible, the turnaround. So did you use that shutdown period to get a lot better or to work on something in specific?
Yeah, 100%. I used that shutdown time I right before COVID happened, I was working on my mechanics. I was trying to polish some things, and obviously we go through the whole shutdown thing that we can't do anything. There's no baseball. So I think I took those 2-3 months just to like really understand the way I wanted my body to move. You want to be in sync so you can load to then unload. So like pitching and hitting is like, you get your load, you have to sync it up so then you can unload at the perfect time to maximize your strength, your efficiency, and all that. So I was really working on getting the timing, syncing up my hands with my legs, and just making sure that I was getting the length I needed to make my pitches look the same out of the hand, to get that extension. So I remember I was playing catch with my dad every single day during the shutdown, which was very special because I was the last couple of months I was able to experience with my father. So I think looking back, it makes it more special. But I was just focusing on, like, okay, everything starts on the rubber. Before I make a pitch, my first movement is always on the rubber. So I want to feel comfortable. When I'm on the rubber, I want to feel that everything is just synced up, and like my arms just coming along for the ride. So I think just having that approach through the whole shutdown period allowed me that by the time the season started in mid-July, I was at a very good spot physically, mechanically, and then it was just a matter of reading swings, executing your pitches, and just making adjustments as the game goes on.
You've been this year one of the best pitchers in the game of baseball. It has been a lot of fun to watch you pitch. What this year have you been focusing on, was there something coming into this year that you really wanted to focus on that pretty early on in the year when you've been dominating all year, but you got to the place in your mind where you're like, yes, I figured it out. I feel good. Is there something you came into this year working on that you figured out?
So this year, I came into the year with two things on my mind. One of them is going back to the basics. You always want to try to be ahead. You want to get the first pitch strike. Pitching in the minor leagues, they make a big deal of first pitch strikes. And then when you really dive into the statistics and what it means, you do realize it makes a huge difference when you pitch ahead in the count or behind in the count. So I think just going back to the basics, like as a pitcher, you want to have options. Options means that if you're ahead in the count, you can throw the pitch you want this hitter to swing at rather than throw the pitch that he wants to swing at.
Right.
That was the biggest one, because like if you're ahead in the count, you get to play around with the edges, expanding the zone to left, right, up, down. And the other one was try to be more unpredictable. As a starter, you desire to pitch deep into ball games every single time, but to do that, you have to face the same lineup 3, sometimes 4 times. Yeah. So trying to remain a little unpredictable is a huge one, especially for someone like me that I rely on some pitches more than I do on other ones. So just finding different ways that even if I'm throwing the same pitch, how can I make it a different pitch? So like to really understand that a fastball down and away and a fastball up and in, even though they're the same type of pitch, they're different in the way that they can set up different ones, changing eye levels. So I think just trying to be efficient in being ahead in the count and remaining a little more unpredictable, not falling into patterns, understanding the approaches, understanding if they're doing adjustments from their previous at bat. If you get a guy out in a way, are you seeing that he's trying to look for the way you got him out, or is he just sticking to his plan? Yeah. So those were the two biggest things for me this year going into the season.
The Marlins rotation that you're a part of is incredible. I mean, yourself, Sandy Alcántara, Trevor Rogers, Edward Cabrera. Hopefully at some point soon or in the future, Sixto Sanchez will be up, and he has some of the nastiest stuff in the world. When you think of the rotation that you're a part of, do you see a world in which the next couple of years you're a part of the best rotation in the game of baseball?
100%. I think being in the rotation allows me to see it more, and because I get to see these guys work day in and day out, I get to see their talents. I think everyone gets to see their talent on display when they're on TV, but when I also see how much they work to be the best when they're on the mound, it's truly inspiring to me. So like I've been able to be with Sandy pretty much since day one, because we got called up to the Marlins at around the same time. So watching him develop into who he is, the way he works, is truly inspiring. Trevor Rogers, with the season he had last year, like we get to see these amazing arms, and it makes you really proud it makes me really proud to be in this rotation, because like there's so much talent here. And then just being surrounded by them, it pushes us. Like we watch each other's bullpens, we sit with each other during games, we pick each other's brains. We're always talking pitching, we're always talking routines, how to get better. So having that support system in one of the most talented rotations in the major leagues it's a really cool feeling. Like when they're on the mound, I'm their biggest cheerleader. Yeah. When I'm on the mound, I can feel they're cheering on me. Cool. So I think just having like that much support system, having that, there's a lot of feedback going. Like even though we all do the same, we all throw the same 5-ounce baseball to the same guy in 6 feet, 6 inches away, we go about things different, because I may have different weapons that some of the other guys have, and they have different weapons than I have. So just trying to understand, like, okay, when you're in this situation with the weapons you have, what do you think batters are looking at, and how do you surprise them? How do you try to and stay one step ahead? So I think not only the talent, but how we got to this point really means a lot. It's really important, because it allows us to just have that extra gear of wanting to be better and just trying to step one step ahead of the competition.
I feel like with the talented group that you guys have, the guy kind of leading the charge, your pitching coach, has to have a big impact. What is, specifically with yourself, the relationship you have with your pitching coach, Mel Stoudemire, and how important has he been to you in your growth?
No, been an honor to work with him in a lot of ways, to the point that I not only see him as a pitching coach, and I've said this before, I see him as a father figure, a role model. You know, he truly cares of not only making you the best pitcher you can be, but about making you a better person, a better teammate, a better human. And I think just having that confidence put on you just make things easier, because it's such a long season. We get to spend so much time with each other, so he gets to see the best version of ourselves, but then he gets to see us our some down moments where when we're probably not going through the best moments of a season. And then just he's very good at letting you know when things are going right, what's working, and when something is not going right, he's also good at telling you what's not going right. But also, while he's saying that stuff, I'm giving you the confidence that it's not going to take a long time to fix if you just focus on working little by little.
Yeah.
So I think working with him has been a tremendous help, not only for me, but for the pitching staff the Marlins have built, because he's being able to build those relationships that eventually help a lot. Because, you know, if you have a good relationship, good communication, that's going to translate to the work you put up in your bullpens. And then that just, by the time you take the mound in between the lines, it just becomes about competing, about making pitches, because you know that in the 4 days between your starts, you prepared to the best that you could have.
All right, so I got some fun questions for you before we wrap up here. And the first of which is, of all those names that we just mentioned in the rotation, Edward Cabrera, Trevor Rogers, Sixto Sanchez, and including yourself and Sandy Alcántara, who of that group has the best stuff?
Best stuff.
Yep.
Pure stuff.
Just pure stuff.
No, I gotta go with Sandy. Elite fastball, elite sinker. Once you started separating the sinker from the four seam, that just became a whole different arsenal. So four seam, two seam, devastating changeup, slider. He's got a nasty curveball that he doesn't throw. I was actually messing with him because when he pitched in New York, they have a really good stats person, and they showed his curveball percentage is 0.2% usage. And I'm like, dude, you got to throw it more. That's a good curveball. Don't keep it in your packet. But also, I keep minding my packet too. So, like, I kind of like set myself up for failure there because he told me the same thing. But he's got an unbelievable, like, repertoire.
I mean, anytime you throw 100 and it moves like a left-handed slider, it's probably going to be the correct answer. Next up, for yourself, who is the toughest out for you on the mound?
Toughest out in the mound? I gotta go with Juan Soto. Obviously, he's in our division, so we get to face the national spot 19 times a year. Yeah. So I'm bound to face him a good chunk, and he's a tough out. But it's to the point that he's so good that you really don't have a place to go. So you just gotta mix and match, and it's just like whatever's gonna happen is going to happen. So it's always a fun at bat because you're gonna pitch him differently. You don't have a set way to get him out.
Yeah.
You just have to mix and match. So it's a tough at bat, but it's also a fun at bat because you get to, obviously it's not a time to mess around, but you get to try different stuff because he's so good that you might have to do something you've never done.
That's a great answer. Okay, next, other than your own home stadium, so Lone Depot Park out of the equation here, what is your favorite stadium to visit?
I would say Oracle Park in San Francisco. When I played in the California League, I was in Modesto, which is 45 minutes away from the Bay Area. So I was able to make a couple of trips around there on off days, and I was like, wow, it would be really cool to play here. And then I was able to, make it with the Marlins, which are National League teams. So we're able to go there every year. So that's been my favorite place to visit.
That's that's on my number one, by the way, of my list of stadiums. Oracle is right at the top of that list. It is beautiful. Next up, if you could take one pitch from any other pitcher in the game of baseball and substitute it for one of your pitches, what pitch would you take and who would you take it from?
Does it have to be pitchers right now or
anybody? You could do now or all time.
Well, even though this guy's a lefty, I would take Steve Carlton's slider.
Okay.
And just bring it to my repertoire and I would dump my curveball right away, and I would take Steve Carlton's slider and throw it 7 out of 10 times.
I love that answer. That's fantastic. So like I said earlier, this year has truly been really fun to watch of you, and it's been a great year for you. And I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch, but how important to you, how awesome would it be to make the All-Star team this year? How cool would that be?
It would be tremendously cool. Obviously, growing up, you get to watch the All-Star game, like, oh, it's halfway through the season and you get to see the best players like all together. And, like, I think you're able to see it's a really fun time because everyone's just enjoying themselves. So like being able to, if I'm able to go there with that honor would be awesome. But I think this year, my main focus is just trying to get through the whole season, being able to make that start every fifth day. I think that's right now at the moment, that's where my focus is. And I think will remain at least for this season, because getting through a whole season healthy, pitching, being the guy that the team can count on is really important as a starter. So that's where my mindset is. And I know if I'm focusing on bigger things rather than individual achievements, I think that will take care of a lot of things. So it would be really cool, but at the moment, I'm just trying to take in really good care of my body in those 4 days between. So by the time I'm able to take them out again, I can perform and give my team a good chance.
Yeah, I agree. Last one for you. And I like to ask everybody a question about this guy because I'm a big fan of his, and knowing and hearing how much you put into your craft, I feel like you'll be super impressed with what he's doing. But Shohei Ohtani, doing what he is doing in the game of baseball right now, when you hear that name, when you watch him, when you think of him, what comes to mind?
I feel like he's like a unicorn. He's like one of those guys, like when you're playing video games and you do 99 for everything, both and hitting. I think he's that guy. He's that cheat code. Like if you put him for hitting, he hits 40 homers, then he pitches 100 miles an hour. So I think playing at the same time that he's playing, it's really cool to see because we get to see all those highlights. We get to see all these things that we used to do when we were little, because when you're little, you play every position, and if you were good at all of them. But doing it at the big league level, I think a lot of people don't really understand how hard it is to perform at the level he does at both those things. So I think Ohtani is a cheat code. He's like the show player I would make if they allow me to do 99 for everything. So it's really cool to watch him. And we went to LA earlier in the season, and just watching him in person, it was more impressive. You could see everyone in our bench when he was batting. We were all paying attention because, it's something you've never seen, something we're seeing now.
Yeah, it's truly incredible. So Pablo, I really appreciate you joining me, man. You've had such an awesome journey to get to where you are today. I guess to wrap up, just if you could give a piece of advice to the younger generation coming up, starting in Little League, going through their life playing baseball, what would be your best advice?
I think my best advice would be, if you're able to focus on what's going on in the moment, that's going to take care of a lot of things. If you start thinking about the past, you might get upset. If you start thinking about the future, you will get anxious. But if you're able to just try and remain where your feet are, which is right here in this moment, I think that's going to help you just navigate a lot of things. And it keeps you just like controlling what you can control. If you're able to control what you can control, whether it's something big or something little, it doesn't matter. But just realizing that you are in control of what you can do at this very moment, it's just going to take care of a lot of things. It's going to take a lot of anxiousness away from you, a lot of like frustration, because what happened, you can't change it. What it can change, at least from a pitching standpoint, like this pitch right here, I still have control over it and I can make a pitch right now.
Yeah. Well, Pablo, I've been a huge fan of what you're doing on the mound this year, but I'm now a massive fan of the person you are as well. So thank you so much for joining me, man, and talking to me a little bit about your life and your journey here. It has been an absolute blast. I appreciate you joining me. You're forever a friend of Flippin Bats Pod, my friend. So thanks for joining me.
I appreciate it, man. It was really awesome. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks. Man, what an awesome conversation. I just wanted to thank Pablo López again for joining me and being so open and transparent about all the stories and decisions he's had to make throughout his life. I am so pumped for the year he is having now, and I was so grateful for him to join me. I hope you all enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. I'm a big fan of his now, for sure. Make sure you're liking, downloading, subscribing, wherever you listen to your podcast. Flippin Bats Pod with Ben Verlander. We're on social media as well, all social medias, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, at Flippin Bats Pod. You can also watch every episode on YouTube as well at Flippin Bats Pod. Thank you all for listening. I really appreciate it, and I will see you next time on Flippin Bats.